Okay, second is Bahana. He is the leader from the Republic Democratic of Congo. Is a leader of the Confederation Paysan du Congo Principal Regroupement Paysan, COPACO PRP. And then third is the Olena Borodina. Thank you. Is a professor of agriculture and rural development, head of the Department of Economy and Policy of Agrarian Transformation, Institute for Economic and Forecasting of National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. And then the last speaker is Morgan Ordi. He's a general coordinator of Lefe Campesina. He's a small-scale farmer from Britain, France, and she produces vegetables to be sold in local market. So she has a master's degree in international relationship, and she is an active member of the French Peasant Union Convention Paysan. So now I give to the first speaker, Fuad Abu Saif. Please, and your time is 10 minutes.
Okay.
Please, Fuad.
Thank you, Zainal. Thank you, everyone. Yes, good morning, good afternoon for everyone. It's my pleasure, actually, to give this presentation about this very interested topics about the food during the eating during the war, actually. I think my name, as I said, Fuad Abu Saif. I'm from Palestine, and I work for Union of Agricultural Work Committees, which is an agricultural organization, also responsible about facilitating and supporting farmers and consumers and the producer having access to their food and resources. And I will try to also cover as much as I can in the coming 10 minutes about the situation, the food situation, and how much we have food during this very critical situation in our region, which is the Arab region and North Africa. And we are also proud to represent this area through the Lavaya Campesina as members and as leaders in the region. I don't know, maybe you know or not, that our area is full of wars, and it's like since now 15 years, more or less, from what they call it Arab Spring, and even before earlier when the war took place in Iraq, the area is full of like a crisis, and everything in the whole region is changed. The number of like people who have no access and food insecure in the region is like in some areas it's above 70%. In some areas where it's like Yemen, Syria, for example, and Iraq as well, and Libya and many other countries, which is like still the political situation is not stable. The people there, they don't know how to have an access to food, and they don't have a sufficient quantity of food. Where also, if we just started, when we talk about the war, it's very important to differentiate between war and other reasons or crises responsible for preventing the people from having access to the food, which is like occupation. Because it's not just war. It's when it comes to the war, finally, war will be finished, and there is a time to, even if it's long or not, then the occupation is different. We are in Palestine suffering from in like 70 years from the occupation, more than 70 years, and there is like a huge pressure over the producers to deliver on time the food to the people, where it's in continuing attacks against the farmers and etc. But also there is other factors like affecting the producers in producing enough quantities of food to give the people here in our region, which is like the climate change as well is responsible about, like, is a very important factor. We are suffering like since maybe 20 years in the region that from this huge effect from the climate change, where it's caused to increase in some area the shifting in the season and having like no enough source of food for more than 50%. Going back to the war, for example, I give an example about, for example, Syria. Syria before 2011, there was what we call it a sufficient self-sufficiency in providing and food to the people. They don't import any food from outside, in particular wheat, for example. And in our region, wheat is like the bread, which is like no way to have like food in each meal without having wheat. So wheat is very crucial for the people in our area. So when for example, the war took place in 2011, the first thing happened that the farmer lost their access to the farm, and their cultivation will be under attack in hot areas. In different troops were trying to control more and more areas in that part of the world, where Syria in after like in between 2010 and 2018, it's lost more than 50% of their cultivated land, where suddenly, without any, there's no plans in our region to be ready if there is some crisis suddenly took place in the area, where we shift to the plan B. It was not actually, we're not designing in the area here because of also the political regime is control the area. We just lost the resource of food. And again, millions of more people entering and being under the poverty line, and it become like food insecure again. Egypt as well, after, for example, what happened in Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, they were depending on like more than 50% of their wheat resources, which is again crucial for more than 100 million people. The number of population of Egypt is like more than 50% relying on the wheat comes from Ukraine. After the war, this was like totally stopped or decreasing in like 90%. The prices is jumping up, and this is affecting actually the possibility and the accessibility of the people to the food. That also increased the pressure of the people in the whole area here. Again, in Lebanon is the same. The prices is jumped more than 400%. It's like a different crisis, very heavy to the people there because of, again, the war, the internal political situation in Lebanon, and also plus the war in Ukraine, and the farmers, they don't have an access anymore to their farm. Another factor, which is like COVID, and this is a very good example when we talk about eating in a time of war, because actually Corona was even heavier than the war, the impact of the war in some areas in the region here, because it's like suddenly we found ourselves, millions of people in the region, they found themselves that in lockdown, and they don't have like, we don't have storages in our area, big storages to have like food for like more extra time. So what we have is like sufficient for a few weeks or months. So we have this, again, Corona without getting ready before, and no one trained to deal with such a pandemic before in our region. And again, in the political system and the regime in the area, they are not planning in long-term period. They are just thinking about the short period. So here also another like example how the people like stuck and having no resources and no access to the food. We believe, and how we dealt with that situation, and how the people and some governments dealt in such very critical situation, there is different like, and it's a good example for everyone. It's not just in our area, because three crises combined with each other, which is like war, COVID, and the climate change, led to another crisis, which is the fourth crisis in the area, which is hunger. And hunger is much like heavier here in the area, because we have like more than, in some countries in our area, more than 70% of the people is just in hunger. And around the world, we heard about the statistics comes from FAO and others, that it's more than 1 billion people is suffering from hunger in the world. So how we prepare, and this is a good example, how we prepare ourselves for the future, what we have to do, what we should do, because the war will continue and it's increasing. I hope no, the war is like the most bad thing could happen for the people. What we should do, I think, from our example, actually, we built here and practically in COVID, and the war is ongoing here as plus the occupation, we have to focus on the actually in the small farmer and small producers. Solution in such like circumstances, I think having like enabling the farmers from having access to their resources, because from the during the war and during the pandemic and during different other crises, the big companies can easily get away from the road. Even the government will lose the capacities and the abilities to keep working during this kind of circumstances. Even many other like alliances or many other like, but they cannot continuing. The only one who can even surviving and can be moved, as what happened in COVID, is like the small farmers. They easily can manage their own farms, and in Palestine we have thousands of farmers, small farmers. We classified them as the small farmers because they cultivated like 1, 2, 3 hectares, and they are many scattered in everywhere. No one can control them in easy way. So exactly, they moved immediately after the lockdown with some facilities from the government. Then they start producing food by their own, which is like, we're not saying that they turned the situation to be as normal, but at least they moved and covered and preventing the situation from being much harder than it was. So that's one thing. The other thing in political, in this kind of war, is political like conflict could run in everywhere. And then a real example now is what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, which we hope that it will be end today before tomorrow, that it's linked to the prices is jumped, and here the prices is jumped like sometimes 20-30%, or sometimes it's even the energy. We don't have an access to the energy in the region. So with a small scale investment in agriculture, with supporting the farmer, having more access to their resources, with activating more the concept of food sovereignty, I think this is the only way that to deal with such big like a crisis could happen here or there. So that's, yeah, sorry.
What?
Yes.
The time is over.
Sorry, just the last thing. So it's again, we are not talking about the problem in distribution. It's more about the accessibility to the resources and the food. Sudan alone, everyone is aware that we have in Sudan more than 50% of the area can be cultivated in the Arab region, which is like very huge area ready to be cultivated. But because of the war and internal civil war and the conflict in there, we don't have an access to that land. And this is why, this is how so it's not a matter of distribution. It's more about the war and having this like new models. We have to develop a new models where the people can deal during the war easily with the land and the producer in their areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fuad, for your presentation. And refer the presentation of Fuad, I remember the report of the SOFI, State of Food Security and Nutrition around the world, that there are 5 root of problem for producing poverty, hunger, and inequality. There are COVID, and then conflict or war, and then also the economic slowdown, and also the high price of food. So many people cannot access on food, or we can say right to food, and also because of war, there is a problem in the right to agrarian resources. Thank you, Fuad. Now we go to the second speaker, is Albert from Republic Democratic of Congo, and he will share about how situation of socio-economic of peasant in Congo amid the political conflict and war in Congo. Please, Albert, your time is 10 minutes.
Vous avez donc...
Yes, Albert. No, Albert, I think, yeah. Okay, I think waiting for our bed enter again. So I go to the third speaker is Olena Borodina. So she will share about the situation of the our bed. Okay, so please, Olena, you first, and your time is 10 minutes. Please.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna switch off my video in order to for you to hear me better. Our today's session is called Food Supply During War and Crisis. And this name is extremely important for today's situation. Today, this war reminded to the whole world, the aggression of Russia against Ukraine reminded to all of us that the real access to the food system, food products, must be considered as one of the rights of all people. The right to food is one of the major rights of all the people. Starting from today, the systems of agricultural systems understand that food or foods is just a product, as just a good. And this is not exactly what's needed. It doesn't show the fact that we are thinking in a progressive way. So when we have the distraction of the right, of this right to food related to people, also in the times of crisis, does influence a lot on the quality of life, on the quality of people's life. We're talking about the supply, disrupted supply system, production system of food products. As a result, military actions on the territory of Ukraine disrupt totally all these production cycles and all the supply cycles. As United Nations organization says, all these such disruptions related to military issues, whenever in the countries where we have small-scale producers, are less influential as in other different countries where no small-scale farmers are present. So in the current period, 70 million of people in all the world were requiring additional product supply. Now only in the Ukraine, due to the international food system that's been developed in Ukraine and has been implemented in 2023, around 11 million of people live in Ukraine without good food provision, stable food provision. The war that has been launched by Russia in Ukraine enables and obliges people to migrate from different regions of Ukraine to other different regions of the same country and outside of the country. And I would like to remember that 8 million of people are the internally displaced people, those who are displaced within Ukraine. United Nations said that around 18 million of people in Ukraine are in need of food solution, and this solution should be immediate. The fact that the Russian Federation uses hunger as a mean to to force and to foster the war is also very arrogant. The United Nations in this year said that 20 countries of the world has live through a catastrophic situation related to the food insecurity. In Ukraine, the right to supply of food products to the local people is extremely acute, and it is shown through to the fact that the Russian Federation destroys fully all our systems, distribution systems. All our lands have been destroyed. Around 30% of Ukrainian lands have gone through different damages related to military actions. We still have some harvest on our fields. However, this harvest is getting massively through massive arsons. And the infrastructure that is related to the supply and distribution of food products is totally disrupted. And all this creates a huge issue for us. Moreover, it all brings us to the fact that the prices on food products are extremely high. Now, the households, farmers' households that used to work internally, they now have to displace their production lots and fields. And this all is related to the fact that the problem is getting bigger and bigger with every passing day. Besides this, this year and in 2022, around 46% of corporate system or corporate food supply system feel a huge impact of the war on their production. So we cannot say that in the nearest time the local market of Ukrainian market and the external markets are going to get the supply from Ukraine. Well, this is not possible for now. As for now, I would like to remember you that the international humanitarian right prohibits to use hunger during military issues as a tool, as an instrument of influence. This also provides, this includes destroyal of fields, fertile fields, food products, and infrastructure system. So now we understand that the Russian Federation uses hunger as a political weapon. And this is the reason why we want to file a claim to the International Humanitarian Court, and we want to file against the Russian Federation, accusing it of having used hunger as a military weapon, as a military tool. However, no one of the other aggressive countries that used to launch different military actions was that aggressive as the Russian Federation. So we now suggest to organize a system that would enable us to bring more attention to what's happening now, and to make the responsible people once again applicable to the law in terms of political systems and judicial system, in order to solve this issue, in order to make them responsible internationally of what they did. We also would like, in the nearest future, we would like to call a Geneva conference and organize a conference with the Geneva members in order to understand, to make other people understand that this hunger is being used in a very aggressive way and it's artificial. However, we see that there are also some positive impacts. This year, we also can, with this year, we can also understand and bring up some good lessons out of this aggression. The experience of Ukraine made us understand that family farming households are really very flexible, are really very agile, particularly in the period, in the moments of these military actions. Small farmers, small farming households, they showed their flexibility and their capability to live and go through these military actions and providing at the same time with food products, not only local communities, but also those people who are internally displaced. We are internally displaced. I'm sorry. Also, these small family households provide food support to our army. And as you know, that the most important thing right now during the war period is the provision of our needy people with good food products and with constant food products.
Hello, Olen, time is over.
Ukrainian experience showed us that the small farmers should be paid more attention. However, it's not only applicable to Ukraine, because our agricultural system is built in such a way, and it was in such a way, built in such a way in the pre-war period, in such a way that we actually we meant to export more products. And our agricultural system was built and working in such a way that we were actually selling things rather than storing products within our country. So now we see that we called all the participants, and we would like to bring to inform more and more members of La Via Campesina and so on that these small scale farmers are more agile and more flexible. And we would like also to make people understand that small farming households should be perceived in a different way as a more flexible and more agile system. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olena, for your presentation about situation peasant in Ukraine. One side, there is problem about food, because the reality there is a policy on the food as a weapon. So it is actually violent of the concept of food sovereignty. But at the other side, small scale producer can provide food for the army. So it is also is a good reality for the the main role of the small scale producer. Thank you very much. Now we go continue to Albert. Please, Albert. I already saw you in the Zoom. Yes, your time is 10 minutes, Albert.
Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm afraid that you couldn't be able to hear me if I switch on the video. I'm Albert Bahana, coming from the coalition in Congo, working for La Via Campesina. I will speak briefly about the situation and the food crisis in time of war in my country. But first of all, I would like to present you with the context. There are numerous conflicts, and with this climate crisis, we are getting into the worst situation, although it's been going on for 2 decades. Since 2016, in the south and southeast of the country, you can see the most consequences. We have a massive displacement, dramatic displacement of a rural population that used to live from agriculture. The farmers in Congo eat the only thing that can produce and cultivate. But we have 5 million farmers displaced in those parts of the country. They cannot cultivate, they cannot produce anything anymore. And this has been happening for a couple of seasons already, and it is getting worse by the time. According to a study, some 13 million people in Congo live in extreme precarity, food precarity. And the assessments that are being done now show that the tendency is even worse. Displacement of the rural population is quite frequent, but not always necessary, and they don't need to last a long time. What does it mean? People who are afraid due to the war, the only thing they can do is run away, flee, because they're afraid, and they decide to pull towards the cities. And you should know that the conflicts are not always spontaneous. The farmers, people who live in villages, when they leave, or those who stay, cannot cultivate, they cannot grow food due to all those conflicts. Now, when we speak about the food production in Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, it is very weak. It was disturbed severely by wars and climate changes. But since 98, not since a couple of years ago, and the production went down after the situation in the eastern and southern part of our country. And due to the fraudulent exploitation in those areas. And it has been going on until still today. Why do we have such low food production in the Democratic Republic of Congo? Well, it is weak and low due to two main challenges. And we know that we could solve, if it was better, we could solve the problem of hunger and poverty. The enclaves in the country, we see people who can produce, but they don't know what to do with the products because they don't have access to natural resources. We lack fertilizers, good fertilizers, and there is a problem with migration. Those are the factors that influence the food production. But there are deeper reasons, deeper causes of this weak development of agriculture in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Generally speaking, the agricultural sector in Congo is facing numerous restraints, institutionals, but also the others. And this all puts people in a very precarious situation. Another weakness of this sector in Congo is linked to its dependence on meteorological conditions. There are unexpected situations when it comes to weather, which prevents people from producing correctly. A farmer in the Democratic Republic of Congo concerns 70% of active population, with a large soil covered by livestock and 70 tons of fish per year. Democratic Republic of Congo could feed approximately 2 billion people in the world if we used all of our resources. And then we have this eastern and southern part of RDC. It's been more than 20 years that the family farming stopped existing due to the conflicts or armed conflicts imposed on our countries. The farmers cannot produce because they know they can be expelled, they can be chased from their areas. And they need help with food in order to survive, but this is not happening. They're not getting the help. And the consequences in such a situation, well, we have quite a lot of internally displaced people, population leaving the rural areas, going to the cities and towns. There is a lack of social rights, economical rights. So summarized, you could see what the place of agriculture is in the RDC in a time of war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albert, for sharing situation based in Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes, there are double problem. First is about the war and conflict, and then also about the climate change. So and finally, many people finally forced migration to the city. So what this will influence the food production and also food sovereignty in Congo. So now we go to the last speaker is Morgan. Will share about how actually the position of La Africa Basina on the war and conflict because of which the people are in the trap of the poverty, hunger, and also equality. So please, Morgan, so your time is 10 minutes.
Thanks a lot, Zainal. Good morning and good afternoon or good evening for everybody. So indeed, there are deep links between hunger and wars and armed conflicts. Yet, it's not the story that it's not exactly the story that we are being told in Western countries. That is a reality. All the last year, in 2022, we heard that the southern countries would face a huge crisis of food insecurity because of the war in Ukraine, because of the problems in the international markets. And it's true that there is a serious food crisis right now happening, and that it has become worse since 2020. More than 828 million people face food insecurity now, and that has increased by 150 million people since 2019. And the number of people facing serious food insecurity, serious situation of hunger has gone from 282 million people to 345 million people in the early months of 2022. Yet, this situation had started far before the war in Ukraine has actually started. And it's mainly a crisis of agricultural prices. The prices of food and of inputs for agricultural production started to rise already in 2020 2021. And it was linked to very high speculation. Actually, we see that there are trends on the international food or agricultural markets that are completely manipulated. And so the prices of agricultural commodities went really completely crazy last year, and then it went down. So we had a bubble up to in spring 2022, and then the prices went down. And now the prices are almost back to the situation where we were in 2021. What we can say is that many southern countries are fragilized by this speculation in the agricultural commodity market, because many countries lost their food sovereignty. Many countries lost the capacity to produce the food for their own people. And this is not by chance. This has been linked to very precise policies linked to the World Bank and the IMF intervention in the 80s and 90s. The IMF and the World Bank pushed all the countries to give the priority to exportation of agricultural commodities rather than having a steady food production to feed their people. So many countries in the south were strongly indebted. They were in the debt trap, and so they stopped to support their farmers, and they started to give priority to export of cocoa or palm oil or other products to other countries, and so they lost their food sovereignty. And instead, they became very dependent on food imports, most of the time coming from the food industry. But this has been very criminal, and we see this now, because now that there are strong problems in the international markets and that the prices go crazy in the international markets, many of these countries cannot afford anymore to buy food in the international markets. And what we see is that the countries which have maintained many peasants, which have supported the small-scale farmers, they are in a far better situation right now, because they have maintained a capacity to produce food in their own country, food to feed their people. And these are countries, most of the time, who have been able to maintain market regulation in agriculture. For example, to maintain minimum support prices, to maintain public stockpiling, and to maintain policies of supply management. So now we really see how important these policies are to support the small-scale farmers and to continue to produce food locally for the local people. So, and what is important is that hopefully, still now, 70% of the food that feed the people is produced by small-scale farmers in the world. So it's small-scale farmers who produce the food in the world. So it's not one single war that is creating hunger in the world. Yet, if we look at the list of countries where the situation of hunger is the worst, it's almost always countries facing war. It's in Afghanistan, in Ethiopia, in Somalia, in South Sudan, or in Yemen. And what we heard also from Palestine, from Ukraine, or from Republic Democratic of Congo, is the same, is that in these countries where there is war, it's becoming very difficult for the people to find food. So when a war starts, it's almost always the people facing very directly this war who go hungry. Why is it so? First, because it's difficult for the small-scale farmers to continue to produce, because their fields are being bombed, because they don't have access to inputs anymore. For example, we heard very clearly in Ukraine that they had no more gasoline to have the tractors running, so it was more complicated to produce for the small-scale farmers. But also sometimes the small-scale farmers maintain a production, but they are not always able to bring this production to the nearby cities because there is a high insecurity in the roads because the roads are very unsecure. And we see this, for example, in Haiti. In Haiti, what the farmers' organization are telling us is that the farmers do produce, but they are losing their production because they cannot bring it to the cities. So it's a very strong difficulty for the farmers who are losing food and who are losing capacity of revenue, and they cannot bring the food to the cities where the people living in the cities would need this food. Another thing that needs to be said is that very often wars are tools to strengthen the domination and the grabbing against people. Very often wars are very powerful tools for the capitalist interest, for imperialism, for extractivism, and also that wars are promoted by the industry of armament, because there is a huge industry of armament in the world, in particular in the Western countries, and that these industries, this capitalist interest of the weapon industry, they do want to maintain wars. So we need to be very much aware of this, that there are strong capitalist interests wanting to have more wars to sell more weapons. And also, for example, the example of Congo, I think it's very clear that Albert made it very clear that in Kivu, the war has a goal to have the people going away from very rich territories with a lot of minerals to develop mining and extractivism. So the war can be a way to grab the resources in many places. Also, in many places, the war have a goal to destruct the local production in order to impose imports, which are controlled by big agribusiness. This is the same thing when there are natural disasters. Instead of rebuilding local production capacities, we see that local food is being replaced by imports of food. And in war, there can be such similar trends. So as La Via Campesina, we want to create a peasant internationalism. That's what La Via Campesina is about, creating capacity of understanding between small-scale farmers, peasants, agricultural workers all over the world, so that we create international solidarity and so that we create an alternative that allows real peace in this world. Peace based on food sovereignty, based on agroecology, based on popular feminism, on agrarian reform, and on human and peasant rights. That is our alternative in this world. And it's very important that we continue to broaden this internationalism. I'm personally very proud that we could have in this webinar people from Congo, from Palestine, and from Ukraine all together, because we do need spaces to talk to each other, to understand the reality of each other, and to understand that everywhere in this world, small-scale farmers are being attacked by different interests to grab the resources, to take the territories against the people. And what we want to build is really the fact that we want peace, and we want a fair peace. And so I will very soon stop, but we are involved as La Via Campesina in different peace process. And I think that's something very important also to say. For example, we are the warrants of the peace agreement in Colombia, because in Colombia, the civil war as that has happened during decades has happened because there was no agrarian reform. And so to have real peace in Colombia, we need agrarian reform. And so that's the reason why we follow up the process of the peace agreement in Colombia to make sure that agrarian reform is possible and a sustainable peace based on social justice is possible in Colombia. In the same way, we do peasants groups, international peasants groups, who go to a country who is facing a war or a very difficult situation to look at the situation and try to understand the situation. We have done so in Palestine. I think at least one time, but I think 2 times there was a delegation of international peasants from La Via Campesina going to Palestine to really see the situation and try to understand better the situation. And we are now planning to do so also in Haiti, because we fear that there will be an international military intervention in Haiti very soon, and we would like to struggle against such a militarization. And to finish, because I think it's very key that right now we are in a situation quite tough because of the climate crisis, because we see more wars. And particularly in this moment, it's highly needed that collectively the social movements and the peasants movement struggle against the militarization. Because the militarization, we know that it will always be in the end against the people and against the peasants in particular. So it's difficult in this moment, but we have a hard work to work and mobilize against militarization, against the logic of imperialism. Thank you, Zainal.